Welcome to the second lecture of Integrated Physiology. Today's journey will start from atom to elements to periodic table. We shall talk about compounds to macromolecules and then from cellular metabolism to finish at acid-base foundation. So we'll see that how chemistry is closely integrated with biology. Let's start. Now, matter is something which has got mass, it occupies space. An atom is the smallest part of it. Hydrogen atom size is about 5 into 10 raised to minus 8 millimeter. So if I put a dash is about 1 millimeter long. So it would require 20 million hydrogen atoms to cover it. Now, how elements differ? How are they arranged in periodic table? Every atom has three types of particles. Electron, which is negatively charged and it's smaller. Protons, they are positively charged and they are larger. Neutrons, they are also large but they are neutral, no charge. So number of protons determine the atomic number of the element. Stable element is someone who has got equal number of electron and protons. And when we talk about ions means they either lose or gain electron to get some charge. The periodic table, it is also known as the periodic table of elements, is a tabular display of the chemical elements, which are arranged by atomic number, electron configuration, and recurring chemical properties. The 7 rows of the table, they are called periods, generally have metals on the left and non-metals on the right. Now, a metal is a material. When freshly prepared, polished or fractured, it shows a lustrous appearance and conducts electricity and heat relatively well. Metals are typically malleable, so they can be hammered into thin sheets or ductile, can be drawn into wires. Now in chemistry, a non-metal is a chemical element that mostly lacks the characteristic of a metal. So a non-metal is typically brittle when solid and usually has poor thermal conductivity and electrical conductivity. The columns, or called as the groups, they contain elements with similar chemical behavior. 6 groups have accepted names as well as assigned numbers. For example, group 17 elements, they are called as halogens. Group 18, they are called as noble gases. If we talk slightly more about the noble gases, they are also called as the inert gases. They are odorless, no smell, no color, and these are the gases with very low chemical reactivity. That is what is called as inert nature. So the inertness of noble gases makes them very suitable in applications where reactions are not wanted. Say for example, argon is used in lamps to prevent the hot tungsten filament from oxidizing. Also, helium is used in breathing gas by deep sea divers to prevent oxygen, nitrogen and carbon dioxide toxicity. The 6 naturally occurring noble gases are helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon and the radioactive radon. So for the 6 periods of the periodic table, noble gases are exactly the member of group 18. Noble gases are typically highly unreactive except when under extreme conditions. Now this property can be explained by the fact that their outer shell, or what is also called as the valence shell, is full, giving them little tendency to participate in chemical reaction. If you look at the table, all the last shell, they are full. In the case of helium, which is very small, that's why there are only 2 electrons in the valence. However, from the neon till the end, in the last valence, there are 8 electrons. Now, hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. And from a medical point of view, it is the element which governs the pH of the body. Also, with oxygen, it forms H2O in the body. Other vital elements are carbon, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus. Atoms group together by sharing electron. So now they are called as molecules. And when different elements combine, they are called as the compounds. Say for example H2O. All compounds are molecules, but all molecules, they are not compounds. For example H2, there is only one element, we'll call it molecule. These simple compounds form complex and large macromolecules. Carbohydrates for energy, lipids for protection, insulation and energy as well. Proteins, they are for structural and vital function. DNA, RNA, they are for transfer of genetic information over generations. Some atoms, they share electrons, and that is called as the covalent bond. Equally shared with respect to time. So such bonds, they are called as the non-polar covalent bonds. When the electron is spending unequal amount of time, then it is called as the polar covalent bond. Say for example H2O, it is partially charged because it is polar covalent bond. Individually weak, but collectively they are very strong, and that is something which leads to surface tension. Now from here we talk about cellular metabolism. Cells, they process nutrient molecules to form energy, and this energy is used to allow various cellular functions, and this process is called cellular metabolism. This metabolism can be divided into two parts, catabolism and anabolism. Now in catabolism, cells break down complex molecules and the energy is released. In anabolism, cells produce complex molecules and they use energy. So complex sugars that are broken down into glucose, which is less complex, inside the cell, glucose is broken down and the ATPs are released. ATP is the currency of body energy. ATPs are produced as needed and almost immediately consumed. Now there is a concept of homeostasis, that means balance within specific range. It is maintained by feedback and negative feedback mechanisms. Say for example, increased glucose in blood leads to secretion of insulin. Excess glucose is stored in liver as glycogen. When blood glucose level drops, there is release of glucagon, which converts stored glycogen into glucose. To understand the concept of acid-base functionality, first we need to talk about what is pH value. The concept of pH was given by Søren Peter Sørensen in 1909. What he said, that pH is the measure of free hydrogen ion concentration or acid load in body. Now this pH is negative log of hydrogen concentration. That means higher the pH, lower the hydrogen concentration. Lower the pH, higher would be the hydrogen ion concentration in the body. It's very important to keep pH within a very narrow range, 7.36 to 7.44 precisely. At 7.36 it is 44 nanomole per liter, and at 7.44 it is 36 nanomole per liter. pH value lower than 7.36, it takes the body towards acidosis. pH value higher than 7.44 takes towards alkalosis. Now there can be metabolic acidosis and metabolic alkalosis. There can be respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis. And these conditions, they can prevail either as an isolated or even a combined one. Why is it necessary to keep pH values within a strictly narrow range? Because the body functions, all the chemical reactions will be running very optimally within this specific range. Now the net acid production is about 100 millimole per day. The free hydrogen ion is 40 nanomole per liter. So in simple words, the amount of hydrogen production is about 2 lakh times. That's the reason hydrogen ion is to be buffered and removed. And that is done by the enzyme called carboanhydrase. What it does, hydrogen ion with bicarbonate, it leads to production of water and CO2. So enzymes are protein molecules in cells which work as biological catalysts. They speed up chemical reaction in the body but do not get used up in the process. Therefore, they can be used over and over again. It's like escalator. Same escalator is getting used up again and again each time there is new passenger. Almost all biochemical reactions in living things need enzymes. And the study of enzymes is called as the enzymology. The molecules upon which enzymes may act are called as substrates. And the enzyme converts these substrates into different molecules and they are known as the products. Now this is a very well orchestrated process. Correct folding of amino acid is vital so that they form a unique 3D structure, and that is something which would be acting as an enzyme. Now in enzyme there are specific regions which are called as the active sites, and on these active sites substrates would be acting. There are two models, one which is called as the lock and key model. So in lock and key model, substrates fit with precision. There is a recent model which is called as the induced fit model. Now in this induced fit model, enzyme is flexible. So it gives some flexibility to the shape of the substrate. Enzymatic reactions, they are extremely sensitive to temperature, pH, enzyme concentration, substrate concentration. And there are few activators which would trigger the enzymatic process, and then there are few inhibitors which would actually stop the enzymatic process.